All right, so hopefully this is what you have already created for the most part. You can see, let me hide this real quick. The lower walls are all concrete with holes. There's one upper wall that's also concrete with holes, and that's this back entrance middle. Everything else upstairs is travertine. And I don't know why that didn't hide. There we go. This one is all curtain wall, but I did not create a new curtain wall on the arch. I took one of these other ones and I moved it in there. So I'll show you if I highlight this wall, I can come in, I can change it back to a travertine wall. And that's what it was originally. And now I'm just highlighting it again and I'm making it a storefront. And the reason it sticks out right now is because I moved it after it was a curtain wall because it's not nearly as thick. So now you can see instead of sticking out, it's actually on the edge. All right, so now we got to make some roofs. I'm going to go to the north elevation. I am going to draw a new model line. So I'm going to go to architecture, model line. I'm going to find the midpoint here. I'm just going to come up 6 inches. So the reason I'm doing that is unlike most roofs where you build up, when you're doing roof by extrusion, it actually comes down from whatever line you drew. So our line, our horizontal line is going to be at the top of this. So I'm going to go to roof by extrusion and click OK. I'm going to make sure it's a 6-inch roof. I'm going to make sure my grid line is 1. And I'm just going to draw a short little line here. I'll go ahead and mirror it now. I'll say mirror draw axis. I'll find, it doesn't know what I'm trying to mirror. So I got to highlight it, mirror draw axis, find this midpoint. Now I have 2 of the short horizontals. I can switch to pick lines. I can now change this to a 6-inch offset. And come up here. Now, if I just use the trim tool, going with the horizontal and the arch, horizontal, the arch, we've got a roof. I've already changed mine to be concrete cast in place, and I'll paint the top of it later with zinc. You could also come in and you could change this to be something like 5 3/4 inches and then make the zinc a 1/4 inch on the top, but I'm going to do it the easy way for today. Click apply, okay. Now it is going to assume that we're running the whole length of the building, but we have breaks in between here. So we've got to shrink this down. And make sure we're snapped to the edge of the arches. All right, you can see there's one done. So we have 5 that have skylights, a solid one, solid one, a solid one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the solid ones, and then I'm going to make an opening in this. So I'm going to highlight the roof itself. I'm going to click copy. I'm going to come from there to there. And now I'm going to zoom in and use this corner. Come on. So I just have to be consistent with the corner I choose. And now I've got my 3 solid ones that I don't have to touch. So the way you get the opening here is you just highlight the roof. And up here, you'll see there's a vertical opening section. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to switch to wireframe so I can see where the arches are. I'm going to make a line and I'm going to come from the midpoint. And these are right from the edge of the arch, inside of the edge of the arch. So they're 2 foot off the edge of the wall. We're going to come over 1.5 because they are a total of 3 feet wide. The same thing on the other side. I'm going to find the midpoint and come over 1.5. And now I'm going to draw from that up. Now I can just use the trim tool. I can go to the horizontal to the vertical, horizontal to the vertical. And now when I click OK, I go back to my realistic view. Now you can see there's an opening across the entire thing. So I'm not going to copy them all right now, but I am going to show you what happens when you get to something like this, where the openings are different. So now that it's already highlighted, I'm going to click copy. And I'm going to drag it all the way over to this one. And you can see it's not really what we want. So when I go to modify, click on the roof, I can click vertical again. And now I can just change the openings. So I'm going to make my life a little easier. I'm going to use split element. I'm going to split it here and here. And now I'm going to draw a new line right across this arch. This arch. And I'm going to use trim. Because it's split, I don't have to redraw any of these lines. The other half is still up here. So again, I'm going to hit the horizontal, come to the side, horizontal, come to the side. So now what's going to happen is I'll have 2 of the 3. And then I'll need to go again. I can click vertical opening, switch to wireframe so I can actually see. And now I'm going to make an opening for the inside. I'm going to draw a line and I'm going to just start here, come across. Problem with this one is it's 2 separate roofs that we have to edit. So I'm just going to show you the one for now, but it's the same process. Did I get too close to, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. This one's on the wrong side. So I need to click here first, click move. Now I can go back to drawing the other one. And the last one's going to be right along the edge of the roof. Got all these partial lines. I'm going to connect them. Then I have 3 fully enclosed rectangles in this roof. And when I click OK, that's what I'll have. I'll have 3 openings in the roof that will show the courtyard. Again, this roof on this side and this side are going to need tiny little cutouts there. But that's how that works. All right, so now we've got to do a skylight. So again, I'm going to go back to the north elevation. I'm going to switch to wireframe. And I'm gonna do architecture, component, model in place. Gonna make this part of the roof, I guess. I guess it could be roof or window, whatever you want to call it. Let's just go with window for now. It's going to be extrusion, and I want to make sure I'm on grid 1. I still am. So I'm going to come up from here about a foot. And my chain is off. Let me turn that on. I'm going to come 2 inches over, down and then another foot, and over. Now, for the other side, I don't have to redraw. I can just highlight it, mirror, draw, find the midpoint. And so now I have both of those elements. I want to make sure that they're aluminum. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to disassociate them from the work plane because we are going to copy them a bunch. And before I finish, I'm going to go back to my 3D view. I'm going to go with my top view. And now I want them basically to only be in the opening of the skylight. Probably easier to do if I'm not in realistic view. All right, so I can click finish, and that's the first part. You can see we've got this reflective support for our glass top. I'm going to go back to north. That's not letting me show the hidden stuff. That's okay. I'm going to eyeball it for now. It will look something like this as far as the arc. So I'm going to go with another architecture component, model in place. I'm going to call this another window. Again, you can use roof if you prefer. It's going to be another extrusion. And this time we're going to use a start end arc radius, just like we did with the arcs. I'm going to go on the inside. And I'm just going to come eyeball what I think will work. We switch to circle. Find that middle of what would be the circle if it will cooperate. Further down than I thought. Yep. And now I'm going to come to this corner. Horizontal lines. This is pretty much just like making the arches. I'm going to use trim. I'm going to go from the horizontal to the part we want to keep on both sides. And now we don't want it to be aluminum. We need to see through it. So now we want it to be glass. We'll click OK. We want to disassociate it from the work plane. And before we finish, we're going to go back to the 3D view. We're going to go to the top and drag this across. Now that lines up there. That lines up there. I can finish that model. So we should probably clean up the ends by making another piece of glass that just follows this profile. Same process. You're only going to make it a little bit thick. I'm not going to show that for the sake of the video, but now we've got our skylight opening. We've got our supports and we've got some clear glass to let everything through. So the last thing is the diffusion. You can do that from the north and just kind of eyeball it. Make sure you're on wireframe and you're coming from the midpoint here. I'm going to show you another way to do it that's not just winging it. Also, if you want, you can click both of these and make them a group. So I've highlighted the support and the glass. Now I can come up here and say create group. I'm just going to call it Skylights. So now when I'm copying, I can just copy the whole thing. And really what you could do is create an entire assembly that has all three and create another group and then just start copying rows that way. I'll leave that up to you. So aside from eyeballing it, the other option is to put this image in. I'm going to load it onto Canvas so you'll have access to it. But I'm going to do it this way so I can try and follow the design as much. My image when I scaled it is not perfectly centered. So I'm going to start by drawing this and then I will move the component to line up with the midpoint. So that'll make sense in a second here. Architecture, component, model in place. This time I'm going to call it a lighting device, I guess. Sure. Click OK. And now since we're coming from the south, I actually want a different grid. Let's see. I want grid 6 now. 6, click OK. And I'm going to start by just following this. I'm going to come as close to the middle of the image as I can, and then we'll move that after the fact. All right, now I'm going to go back to this arc. Come to the end. And I'm just going to try and follow that image. All right, so I've got that. I'm going to use the offset tool. We'll see what 2 inches looks like. It's a little thicker than 2 apparently. So let's try 3. Yeah, that's close. All right, so I've got 3 inches of thickness. I'm going to close this off. I'll trim that up. I want to make sure I'm as vertical as possible. And now, rather than redrawing this, I'll highlight all 3 of these and do mirror pick axis because we have this vertical here. Now these 2 are already connected. These 2 are overlapping, so we have to clean that up. All right. So before I do anything else, well, let me make sure I change this back to aluminum. And I'm going to highlight everything. And I'm just going to try and move it over to the midpoint. Let's see if it'll let me now. So that should be the midpoint. I'm going to click OK. What? Oh, yeah, that thing I just used to line it up. All right, so I got to get rid of this. It was there to help me mirror and to help me find the midpoint. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to disassociate it from the work plane. And I'm going to go to my 3D view. Go to the top. And now it should be somewhere over here. Might have drawn it in the wrong place. Yeah, I drew it on the one that doesn't actually need it, but that's all right, because I'll just move it. I'm gonna go back to 3D wireframe so I can actually see it. Weird, it didn't do the correct grid. All right, as long as it runs inside each arch, it should line up with our skylights. And I will test that theory. I'll go back to realistic. And I'm going to highlight. That's because that's why I get confused because this was wrong. All right, I'm going to highlight my roof and my skylight. And now I'm going to copy it from this grid vertically to this grid. Now it all lines up, and I can check that by adding in a section box. If I come over here to section box with apply, now this shows up. And if I drag this in a bit, I can see these all line up with each other. Same thing with the skylight. Well, not quite the same thing. So with the skylights and this diffraction, when you get to the courtyards, you just have to treat them like you did the carrying beams. So you have to shorten them so that they're not cutting through the courtyard, and then copy them over and make them the correct distance for the other side. And that is it for the roofs, skylights, and light diffusion.